Hi, welcome back. I'm Kristina Lee, and today I'm going to continue to talk about intervals. In my last video, I talked about feeling intervals, how they feel under our fingers as pianists. Intervals, just to define it again, for those of you who don't know what it is the distance between two notes. And the beginning of that, in my opinion, to understand what it is to start playing intervals without really understanding the reading, so that you know how it feels under your fingers first. And then when you start reading, you're already going to have some ability to play the right intervals under your fingers. So today, as my second video on the interval series, I'm going to talk about how to read intervals. So when pianists read music, we don't actually read note by note. It's really important for us to understand how to identify the note, but once we identify certain things, we read the pattern. And really the patterns that we're looking at are intervals. Whether it's something like this consolation, if you look at the left hand, you see all of this. When I look at that, I just see three notes, and I know what their intervals are. So just by looking at that group of notes, I can tell that there are three notes and what kind of intervals they are moving in. And I know how to do it under my fingers. That's just an example of what I'm talking about when I say intervals. Let's look at another example. These are advanced pieces, and they're just being shown as examples, but I'm going to talk about how to read intervals from the very beginning in just a few minutes. Here's another great example of how intervals are read. This is Clair de Lune by Debussy. And this second page, the beginning of this part. Now, when I look at these chords, I know that they are made up of two different kinds of intervals. And I know how they feel under my fingers. And I'm also looking at chord to chord and see what kind of intervals they are moving in. So really, when you become an advanced pianist and you're looking at music, you're looking at a pattern, like chunk of a pattern. The music is more like a picture. At the same time, it is tapestry. So I often talk about how complex piano music is, and that's why it's so hard to read. And it's because of that. We're looking at the whole picture. And really, literally, I'm like looking at the whole page. I also am looking at every single detail of the notes in between, vertically and horizontally. Here's a page from my sight reading jumpstart kit, where I introduce students to different concepts, but intervalic reading is one of the main concepts that I talk about. And here it says interval is the distance between two notes. When we count intervals, the note we start on counts as one. So one step up is an interval of second, and two steps up is an interval of third. So let's look at what that looks like when we look at the notation. So here you see examples of intervals: seconds, thirds, fourths, and fifths. The left side are melodic intervals. That means you play one note at a time. For example, if it's a second. The right side shows harmonic intervals, which means that you're going to play them together. For example, like this. That's an interval of second. So this part, this page that I'm showing you is very, very important. This is how interval work. When you have a second, you have one note on the line and one note inside a space. Okay, so line note and a space note. When you have a third, you have line note and a line note. or space note and a space note. Look at this example in the bottom here. So when we say like we need to recognize intervals, we're looking at that and we immediately know that that's a third. And you might just see that third, or that third might be hidden with other notes, but you recognize it because you become so good at identifying that detail. For me, it's really helpful to see the odd numbers, thirds, fifths, and sevenths. I just think that it's easier to identify those because they are both line notes or both space notes. So if you can really be confident in identifying the thirds, fifths, and sevenths, it becomes much easier to envision what the seconds, fourths, sixths, and octaves look like. That's kind of how I teach my students. For example, when I teach my students in person and we have a fourth or sixth, I ask them, is it bigger than a fifth or a smaller than a fifth? Because usually students become quite good at identifying fifths. After I talk about this, I'm going to give you really practical ways on how to learn to identify intervals, reading, and practice that on the piano. But let's start with looking at Minuet in G first by Bach. Hi, this is Kristina. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, I would love for you to subscribe. And if you like my teaching, please check out my course, Simple and Beautiful Piano for Adult Beginners. So now let's look at a piece. This is Minuet in G by Bach, which is more of entry-level classical piece, and figure out how this all translates when we are reading music. So let's just look at the very first beat, measure 1, first beat, right here. We do have to identify those notes to start with. Right hand is D, okay? Left hand, if you know that that's a third and a third, or fifth outside and a note in the middle, you know that it's a chord. Oftentimes, you don't have to read all three notes. You just have to read one of them. For example, the lowest note is G. Yeah, and then it's a skip and a skip, third and a third. Okay, so that beginning point is important to really identify notes by their names. After that, when you're looking at the right hand, you look at the distances. Oh, this is a distance of fifth. And then these are all seconds going up. And then it's really helpful to like learn from what you just played. The next note is also fifth, right? That's where we came from earlier. And then the next note, you might have to recognize that note because that's like a jump. Okay, that's an E. You can use FACE for space notes. And then it's a third down. Steps going up. There is it's a key of G, so it's got to be F sharp. Okay, and then the next are bigger intervals, right? Right here. And you want to maybe quickly think about, is it like 6, 7, or 8, right? Can't be 7 because 7 would be space and space or line and line. So it's either 6 or 8. That's how you can kind of quickly deduct in your brain what it is. It's actually an octave. And then you would do the same thing with your left hand. We start with the chord, okay? This next note, you want to compare it to the chord that you have, okay? It's not one of those notes, right? You want to think about, oh, it's just the one step above. And then it's a step above, and then in another step above, and a step down. And for many, especially many adult learners who didn't learn to read piano music as a child, you usually have to do hands separately. It takes a while to like see that whole picture that I talked about. I think it's a certain type of brain activity that we learn as children when we learn to read music, piano music as youngsters. And some people have it, they can see the picture, but it usually takes quite a long time. Not just time, like it's an accumulation of reading lots of music because it's really decoding like an ancient language, right? So I wouldn't worry about like, oh, I can't read two hands together. If you're not there, just do one hand at a time and then put it together. So the first line goes like this. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a really practical way of learning how to recognize and identify intervals. There's one app that I love and I use all the time. This is like one app I paid maybe like $5 or $6, but I can use this app with like students of virtually every level for all kinds of musical skills and training. It's called Tenuto. So here it is on the left with the blue background. So I'm gonna open Tenuto. It's also available on the online. It's musictheory.net. And if you go to the exercises section, you can do the same exercise just using your computer. So you don't have to have iPad and you don't have to have this app. So many apps are really only for iPad, so I'm so glad this is available. So if you look at the top, which is staff identification, the third one is interval identification. I'm gonna open this. Now you can see the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Those are the intervals I'm working on. So with Tenuto, it's really important to know how to set it up. So you want to go to the top right, for setup. So let's go to clefs. You want to pick the right clefs. We're going to pick treble clef and bass clef. You could pick grand staff too. There could be a little bit of a confusion there, so I don't usually pick grand staff, but you can try it and you can hopefully figure it out, the little possible confusion. And then the range, you can move it even further, but I think in almost everything, if you can read line notes, 2 line notes above and below the staff, that's probably a good start. And key signatures, just start with no key signature, which is on top. Because if you have key signatures initially, it can be confusing. Just start with a simple one. Display mode. So I think this is useful. Harmonic or melodic. It's, I think, easier to train harmonic first, which is when you play the notes together, then melodic. But for right now, I'm just going to put both. So you can experiment with that. Require quality. We don't start with quality. If you look at my previous video, I talk about how seconds also have like minor second and a major second. We're not going to worry about that. We're only going to just worry about second, just the interval names without the quality. Okay, and then you can choose the intervals. So second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. We can start there. Or you can do even less. But I'm going to show you how it works. Note values, you can choose different note values. I like using whole notes because they're just simple. Next question after the audio, or you can have it wait or immediately. Challenge mode, when you get used to it, you can use the challenge mode to test yourself as well. We're not going to do the challenge mode right now. All right, so let's look at this. Of course, clef doesn't matter, because we're just reading the notes and we're not trying to play it. initially. So this is a third. This is what? So you want to think about where the fifth is. It's a sixth, right? It's a third. It's a melodic interval. And that's a fifth. Third, melodic interval again. Third again. And this. So you want to, again, think about where the fifth is because it's close to fifth, right? And it's a little bigger than fifth. So it's a sixth. And then a fifth. So I would just start with like doing this. Now, if you're doing this and this stresses you out, then simplify it. Let's say, oh, the sixth is just too much to think about. Take it off. And just do two, just do 2, 3, 4, 5. Or you can say even like, okay, I'm just going to work on the thirds and fifths. That's a fifth. That's a third. The thing about this is also third. The thing about third is when you look at the music, it looks like they are next to each other on the keys, but they're not. They're skips. So practicing this, like working on your skills, clarifies some of the things that can be really misunderstood if you didn't just work on separate skills. So as you're doing this, so I'm gonna, I can reset score 2. I should actually show you what happens if I don't get it right. Let me go back to the other intervals as well. Let's say we're gonna do 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's say I did second. It just waits for you to get it right. So you don't have to stress out. You can just take your time. But let's say that's easy for you. Then I would start just playing those intervals as well as you're using the same app, okay? Check the clef, okay? It's bass clef, that first note is G. It's going up by a step. And it's a second. And you can even hear whether you played it right. It's a second again. It's treble clef, F, going up by a step, second. Yeah, right? And then it's bass clef, okay? The lower note is B. We usually read, when we have like stacked notes, we usually read from the lowest note, B, and then fifth above. And if you practice your feeling intervals like without even looking at the like A, B, C, D, E, F, like I hope you can just like play it, B and F. That's an intense sound. And all cows eat grass. C is the lowest note, okay? And then it's a fifth above. All right, it's kind of addicting after a while. So this is a great way to identify your intervals by reading and start practicing on the keyboard and adjust the setting to fit your level of reading and musicianship, and you can get a lot out of it. I mean, even if you do an exercise like this for 5 minutes, the key is to do it regularly and often. Whenever you're working on skills, regularly and often. Don't do it if you get too tired, because from that point on, you might actually start confusing yourself. And if you just try to do too much, you're gonna get overwhelmed. Don't do it. Simplify it. It's better to just like compare 2 and really know that really well before adding another one than try to do like 5, 6, 7 different intervals at the same time and you're always struggling. You will get faster if you start with small and do really quality practice. So I hope this was really helpful for you and help you in your continued piano journey. Check out my Sight Reading Jumpstart Kit. It's a PDF with like over 200 exercises, and it takes you from very beginning closer to a more intermediate or late beginner level of reading. Many people never get there because most of the method books out there just move so quickly that you might start reading in the beginning and next thing you know, you're confused. So I really try to mitigate that gap by making sure every single step has been explained. So that's available as a separate purchase and download. It's a self-study PDF course, or of course you can get Simple and Beautiful Piano Bundle, and the Sight Reading Jumpstart Kit comes with it. Good luck and see you again.